Unpopular review will not take responsibility for what is about to happen. The lights are about to turn off, and when they come back on, you will have one final Justice League review. There will be no countouts, no disqualifications, anything goes, because this review is an unsanctioned, lights out review. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is Tuesday, March 23rd. We are about 5 to 6 days removed from the release of Zack Snyder's Justice League. Welcome to the Kaden Kut, an unsanctioned review of Zack Snyder's Justice League. I am your host, That's So Kaden. I am joined tonight by Evil Dose, the Malachi.
Indeed. I am here to grace you with wisdom, knowledge, and facts.
So tonight's going to be a little different than last night. If you caught the official unpopular review of Zack Snyder's Justice League last night, you would notice that it was a bit of a love fest over there, and we thought that we had to make a little change to that. We could not let this movie go unscathed. So we're going to be talking about a little bit more of the issues of the movie, some things that we did like, but mostly the issues that we have, dissect what's wrong with this movie, why it is not a masterpiece, as some are saying. Evil Dose, you have a lot bigger thoughts on this movie in terms of critiquing it. So why don't you start out with some of your key issues with this film?
Big Thoughts is my middle name. Now, let me start with some overarching items. First, about the show last night. One, we are not going to critique their reviews that took about a third of the show, which involved the Android versus the iPhone. That's all fine. So obviously this movie was such a masterpiece that they spent a good 1/3 to 40% of the show talking about the iPhone versus the Android. Excellent. There's impeachment exhibit number one. Secondly, 50% of the show was dominated completely by one guy who kept going on and on and on about what was in the original movie and what was in the comics and what was in the new 52 and what was in the reboot. Nobody cares. Nobody cares about that. This is just about this movie. So let me back it up. Let me bring it in right here, as my friend Kevin Mack would say. Okay, bring it in right here. I didn't hate this movie. I hated the 2017 Justice League. That was a terrible movie. It was so terrible that I thought I was wrong, and I tried to watch it a second time. A couple years later, couldn't even make it past 40 minutes. Brooding Cyborg, too much, just enough. So, couldn't even make it through a second time, barely made it through the first. Hated it. Hated Aquaman. Hated Wonder Woman 84. Liked Wonder Woman. Hated Batman versus Superman. Most people did. It was terrible. So then I saw the Snyder Cut. I really wasn't interested in watching it. But what I got was all this. This is the greatest movie. This is the greatest superhero movie. Top 10 superhero movie from people I respect. I heard somebody compare this to The Godfather. They said this is the Godfather of superhero movies. I have an analogy that I think I'm going to close out. It'll be one of my closing statements. But let me say this. Justice League 2017 was awful. This was better. It took an awful movie and made it okay, but it was 4 hours long, which made it a half a step or a step below okay. So what's below okay? Let's just call it meh. So it went from terrible to okay. Were there good parts? Sure. Were there interesting parts? Sure. Did they fill in holes that were left of the 2017 movie? Sure. Did they open up new ones? Did they have new things to mock that people seem to be ignoring? Oh my God, yes. And we're going to talk about those tonight. I'm so proud to be part of the Kaden Kut.
So now I'm going to give my overall reactions, then we can start breaking this movie down. I did not hate the original Justice League release in 2017. I don't know if that's because I had heard really bad things about it, so I had a really low expectations going in. But I didn't find it to be the worst movie ever. I never rewatched it. I think I rewatched maybe an hour of it, and I didn't like it as much as I remembered. So I'm not going to rewatch it. I don't want to ruin that. I'm just going to keep it at a not that great, but not the worst movie ever. I'll keep it around that level, kind of Thor the Dark World, Iron Man 3 area. I watched this. I actually really enjoyed this. I thought it was a pretty solid movie, much better than the original. My issues, though, are that there are tons of plot holes. It is much longer than you need to have it be. There are multiple unnecessary scenes. I did not love the overusage of CGI. I thought there were some scenes where you could just tell that the ground was CGI when it didn't need to be, like patches of grass that were CGI, which made no sense. He couldn't have done some in location filming. Didn't love that. And then my main issue, though, is the praising that this film is getting. People are praising this as one of the best comic book movies of all time, and it is simply not that. It is not the best DCEU movie that's been out there. There are much better ones. I said the other night that I like Shazam a lot more, and I do. This movie is a 4-hour movie, which it does not need to be. You don't need to praise it because it's someone's vision. You don't need to say it deserves to be 4 hours because that was his original vision. I don't care about some director's vision. A mediocre director. Zack Snyder is not a fantastic director. It's just, he's not. He's made some pretty crap movies. Defending a director because about how long it's going to be with unnecessary scenes because it was his vision and how he was going to go with next makes no sense. A lot of these scenes that set up sequels should have been cut out considering he knew there wasn't going to be a sequel. Don't tease sequels when you know you're not going to have them. I'll get a lot more into this, but it's really frustrating considering the way people are treating this movie as a masterpiece of cinema and saying that this is what Martin Scorsese was talking about when he was complaining about Marvel. They're saying this is what Scorsese wanted. I don't think Scorsese wants to watch this movie.
Yeah, I agree with everything that Kaden said there. And if this was Zack Snyder's vision, let's dissect that just a little bit. Because if this was his vision, let's see, what was basically the plot here? So 5,000 years ago, give or take a few years, this great force of evil emerged upon the earth, and the previously warring tribes of Earth came together. The Amazons, it looked like the Norsemen, you had the Atlanteans, you had the old gods, the Lantern Corps came down, etc., etc. You had Zeus, it looked like Zeus and Ares were fighting side by side.
Mm-hmm. It was, yeah, Zeus and Ares, one of the lanterns.
I don't know, whatever it was. But if this was his vision, well, guess what? That was J.R.R. Tolkien's vision twice. The Battle of the Five Armies in The Hobbit and the origin story from thousands of years earlier when Sauron was first defeated by the elves, the men, the wizards, the dwarves, blah, 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 when they all got together. So if that was his vision, he stole it. That's plagiarism from Lord of the Rings. Then part 2 of his vision is that you have this really powerful, super evil bad guy trying to take over the universe for no other reason other than he's going to take it over. And Earth, for whatever reason, is presenting this particular problem to him, not just once, but twice. So a slight variation there, but basically it's Thanos without a motive other than he's psychotic and wants to take over. At least Thanos had a motive. At least Thanos thought that the universe had scarce resources, and so he needed to, end 50% of all, sentient life, I guess, was whatever it was. Whether or not you agree with his motivations, whether or not you realize that space is infinite and there's multi-dimensions, so really resources should never go away, especially with timelines going back and forth, at least he had a motivation. He had a reason for it. He wasn't just trying to take over everything. Darkseid, I always say Darkseid, was trying to take over every place, just because. But in essence, it was Thanos. It was the same story. You had the Armada going and trying to destroy everyone and taking over and subjugating them. And those that were killed became his parademons. Same as Thanos. They became his armies. So it was really the same thing. One other little thing, and then I'm gonna turn it back over to Kaden. But you see where I'm going with this. Zack Snyder's vision was plagiarizing the plot of the MCU and Lord of the Rings and having them have sort of a baby in one movie when basically you had 23 movies cover the other ground. Okay, so we have Thanos. Not Thanos, I'm sorry. Darkseid. You know what, Kaden, I'm going to cut it over to you. I'm about to get too annoyed with this.
Oh, I got Chris in the comments saying that we both missed the vision of the movie. Chris, explain the vision of the movie.
No,
Also,
he explained it last night.
I mean, he lost all credibility from quoting Seth Rollins.
Yeah,
No one likes Seth Rollins. He ruins everything.
It's good to quote me. The vision was, I have no vision, so I'm going to plagiarize it. The vision was, I like to use slow motion. So you know what? I do want to start with, when we start our criticism, let's start with the opening scene. So when Mace Windu was killed by the Emperor, he goes, oh, 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 as he falls out the window. So in Superman, they're being, ow, 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 ow. And they're using that still almost comic book frame sequencing they use, which, by the way, I like sometimes. I liked it very much in Wonder Woman. There are times and places when it's very effective. Thor Ragnarok sort of stole it in the Valkyrie scene when they were battling Hell and lost. It can be done quite beautifully and quite effectively. This was just dopey, but more than that, it didn't even seem that it was that loud or that powerful. It just seemed like people were turning their heads and going, eh. You didn't even see Batman sort of like needing to brace himself. Wonder Woman wasn't, anchoring herself with the lasso to the jet or using her Amazon strength. You didn't see like rocks breaking under her feet like you did with the Flash when he tries to stop. You barely.
I get where you're going with this. I'll defend this opening a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I like the original opening of Justice League a little bit more than this new opening because the original one showed how the world was grieving after the death of Superman. I like that a little bit more than this. The point of the waves, though, they weren't supposed to be powerful waves. They were supposed to communicate to the rest of the world that Superman had died.
Well, so that would be a powerful wave. They opened up the mother boxes. That was the whole point.
I think the point of it wasn't that the wave itself was powerful. I think it's that the Kryptonian is dead, so now the mother boxes can awaken because Darkseid doesn't have to fight a Kryptonian.
Okay, we're going to get to those things, but first of all, the mother boxes. How are they different from the Infinity Stones? They're not. Same thing.
No, they're really similar.
But I think it was supposed to be loud and powerful because they showed it echoing throughout the world, not just the world, but they heard it on Paradise Island. They felt it in Atlantis. They showed a scene from space, but they weren't even showing ripples. Like cities would see it, and you'd see like a little dust cloud, but it wasn't that powerful. There wasn't that earthquake, that shockwave thing that would happen. Now on the Kryptonian thing, I wasn't planning to get to that until a little bit later. But they didn't have a Kryptonian. That makes sense if you never heard of Superman before in his origin story. Superman has his powers from our yellow sun. The fact that there was a Kryptonian here wouldn't matter because if they met Kryptonians on Krypton, they're not Supermen. They're regular in their red sun with their gravity. They're the same.
I have that exact same issue.
And I know that they've adjusted in the comics that he stores it like batteries in his skin or cells or DNA, and so he can maintain his superpowers for a long, long time, and they fade over time or whatever it is. Whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is that a Kryptonian to them was not like the boogeyman. Kryptonians to them would be just another planet.
Yeah. No, I had that issue too. I remember thinking like, why would a Kryptonian even matter? And I saw people when they discussed that scene, they did say that. That's where I kind of got that idea. I was confused with that scene. That's what I saw as the best explanation. But they did set up in Man of Steel that he did only get the powers from being in our red sun or being in our sun. So that was an issue that I kind of had too. Unless they did explain it in Man of Steel, and I missed that. But I mean, how would they have known about our Kryptonian since he was only here for about 40 years? That's another thing. Like he was barely here, 30 years maybe. So how do they even know that a Kryptonian is here?
Like,
and why did the mother box is not awake for thousands of years?
Right. Exactly right. So, I mean, okay, so the premise is done, but let's accept the premise and move on from that. First of all, a little pet peeve of mine. You have this great fighting force of parademons and superpowers and an armada, and you're fighting through the universe, and presumably Darkseid is immortal, and so are most of his allies. Okay, fine. Does that mean that they stop advancing technology? They've got the same ships and the same guns 5,000 years later. I mean, sure, the Amazonians didn't change anything, but the humans did. I mean, I presume other planets did too. I think that they would want to keep up the arms race and stay ahead of everyone else. I mean, at some point, they're going to meet people who can shoot the parademons just as well the parademons can shoot them. In fact, they did. Batman had a machine gun, and that took care of parademons when he could get them. So that just was something that annoyed me, that the technology didn't change one bit in 5,000 years. That's just lazy.
I agree. So now let me get into I don't know if it's my main criticism, but one of my main ones is there were so many unnecessary scenes that did nothing in the story. So first we had the Iris West scene. I'll put that up here. So we had this Iris West scene where Barry Allen is going to apply for a job at a pet store, and Iris gets into a car accident, and so he goes to save her. It was unnecessary. It it didn't develop Barry as a character at all. It didn't develop Iris. It was used to spin off into the Flash movie that's coming out next year and 2 years, but that's a completely different movie now. And Iris wasn't even cast in that movie until a few weeks ago when Andy Muschietti decided to hire her. So I still don't. Again, this is going to add to a lot of the scenes I find pointless. They were all set up scenes that did not need setup anymore. If you don't need to set up a movie, then take the scenes out. Again, I know he wants his original vision of what he wanted in the movie 5 years ago, but at that point, it's all gone. You don't need to do that anymore. And that's where I'm mainly confused. Why did he keep things in the movie that he knew the sequel wasn't coming out? So why can't he somewhat change his vision with how the future has gone? If you're going to complain and say his vision couldn't have been completed without that, then he's not a good storyteller. You have to be able to adapt as a storyteller.
I agree. That scene was entirely unnecessary. I know that people are saying that it humanized the Flash. First of all, he's the most human character of them all. He's such a dork. You get him right away. They went through his origins, not his origin story, but his deal with his father. Okay, he liked the girl. He worked a million jobs to try and put himself through school. At the end of the movie, he had his degree. He had a job already that presumably he needed a degree for. I mean, what did we skip 2 years of community college, or 3 or 4 years of regular school, for that to get the job? Again, nitpicky, but it's dumb. Mm-hmm. He could have said, "Dad, I got into college, and I'm paying my tuition, or whatever it is. I'm going to be my criminal justice major." Whatever it was, you're right, it was dumb. But what bothered me more about it being unnecessary is that, once again, Zack Snyder plagiarized the entire sequence of the Flash from the Quicksilver character in the X-Men movies, where they do everything else, stops entirely, but he's moving so fast that he's still moving sort of slow and normal, and can sort of make little adjustments and fool around and joke around and do all these things at his own pace, and nothing else is moving because he's that fast. Which was sort of clever the first time I saw it with Quicksilver, less clever the second time, and certainly less clever in another franchise with another director, with another character. There's nothing clever about it at all. The only thing that was interesting was that the shoes couldn't handle the pressure and ripped off. I don't know why the rest of his clothes are okay, just because, if it's that fast, it shouldn't matter that they're not hitting the ground. And I still would think the glass would might cut him somewhere along the way. Anyway, that's not important, but the fact that they used the whole Quicksilver, stop frame type of situation was annoying. But you're right, it was completely unnecessary. They never even said what the woman's name was. Obviously, if you watch the TV show, you could figure out, oh, that's probably the movie version of his lady interest. If you were into the comic books, you'd probably know it, but I'm not. So as a fan, what's the purpose? They spent 10 minutes and only barely rescuing some random woman, and then going away to get a job as a dog sitter. I mean, it was
Mm-hmm.
It was dopey.
The situation itself made no sense. Why would a professional truck driver in a city, put his head down for a good minute or two? Mm-hmm. It would never happen. It made no sense.
Right, like he doesn't know the way for a red light to pick up a sandwich. It's already dirty. Exactly. Mm-hmm. I mean, the whole thing was dumb. Of course, they want to make it clear that the truck driver wasn't a bad guy, and that she pulled out when she had the right of way, and she had a cool antique or type car. It's whatever. the whole scene was unnecessary. A whole lot of nonsense. Very D-class movie storytelling there. And like you said, all of it entirely necessary. We already know the Flash is the Flash. We already know that he's super fast. We didn't need to see it from here. And frankly, if he was going to rescue her, it could have been in a more impressive way.
Yeah.
Like maybe get there before the truck, maybe move the car, maybe stop the truck. I don't know. So, something more impressive than this over-stylized silliness. By the way, if the Lantern Corps was there 5,000 years ago, why wasn't the Lantern Corps here now?
Yep. Well, so that is something that I'll give him. I'll let Zack Snyder pass on this. So I'm going to get into this real quickly. The Martian Manhunter stuff, also completely irrelevant because I'm guessing they're never going to make a Martian Manhunter film. However, it did come out that Martian Manhunter scene at the end was supposed to be Green Lantern, and he was forced by the studio to change it due to them wanting to make a Green Lantern film later on. And so they basically said, you have to change this to someone else. It cannot be Green Lantern or you're not getting your movie made.
We will get to the Martian Manhunter, in about 17 hours when we get to the end of this movie. But it still doesn't explain why no one from the Lantern Corps came for that.
Yeah.
I mean, if the reason was they didn't want to make another movie, they should have addressed why the Lantern Corps couldn't be there. Were they decimated? Were they all dead? Were they imprisoned? Did they have the last 12 lanterns in isolation and later on they escape and only one survives or only a certain number survive or something? Whatever it was, they could have made up something to explain it. On a ship, they could have shown cells where the lanterns were enclosed in yellow energy or something. They could have addressed it. I have some other issues with some of the premises of the movies. One, okay, we can accept the Amazons don't change their technology because their whole thing is the old ways, and they're basically, super warriors who are, they don't all have the blood of gods in them like Diana does, but they're sort of demigoddess. They're certainly stronger than your average man, though I don't quite understand the beginning of Wonder Woman then when they were run off by a bunch of World War I era weapons, carbine bolt rifles and whatnot. But that's not really my issue with it. I just want to raise that the Amazons hadn't changed their technology one bit. Let's just say tradition, fine. I agree, Andrew. But when they decided to guard these 3 mother boxes / Infinity Stones, did they hide them in these deep, dark recesses? No. They put them on pedestals. In Atlantis, they put it in a pedestal on a chamber lit up. On Paradise Island, they put it on top of a pedestal in this structure. Yes, I know it's guarded, but still, they put it on a pedestal with the sky window up there. And the men, they buried it in a 3-foot hole somewhere, I guess England or Norway or something. Not exactly great precautions being taken here. I'll give the men the pass because they're dumb. They didn't know what they were dealing with. But the Amazons and the Atlanteans certainly had superior knowledge and used better security measures. At least the Amazonians built this Rube Goldberg machine to trap the mouse. The Atlanteans had like 4 guards there.
The Atlanteans, I know they hit it in actually a much better spot. The Amazonians was an easy one to find, so all you had to do was go to Paradise Island. The Atlanteans, I know they hit it fairly well because he was interrogating people to find it. So I don't think it's as bad. The Amazonian one, that's the easiest one to find. You just have to go to Paradise Island.
More ripoff. Steppenwolf even looked like Roland the Witness. Right to the hammerhead. Basic shape. Yeah, the other one was more human. This one was more reptilian, but still basically looked like Roland. And I don't, if Darkseid is so evil, wants to destroy everything, and apparently the backstory of Steppenwolf, which they needed to give him, is that he was part of some rebellion, but I guess he changed his mind last minute and gave away the goods and betrayed his fellow rebels. Wouldn't someone like Darkseid kill him immediately instead of putting him in charge of legions to take over worlds? I got it. He had a debt. He still owed him 50,000 worlds, which presumes that he, collected some other number of tens of thousands of worlds between then and now. But still, a guy like Darkseid does not let betrayal go. He, and give the guy his own armies. It makes no sense. It was just, it's inconsistent with that type of character.
Yeah, let's discuss that Darkseid plot hole a little bit with Steppenwolf and Darkseid. So we learn in the film that the mother boxes, they were left on the Earth after the Amazonians, the Atlanteans, the humans, and the Green Lantern and Old Gods. They defeated Darkseid, kind of. I guess they technically defeated him. And so he left the mother boxes got left on Earth. And then they hid them, obviously. But we also find out that the anti-life equation was carved into the planet. And Darkseid did not know that Earth was the planet with the anti-life equation, that he was trying to find the planet that had the anti-life equation. And that's
even though he saw it, even though he caused it by driving his weapon into the Earth, and the octopus hydra lava lines drew right there before him.
Yeah, we see him as the one who carved the anti-life equation into the Earth. Right. So how does he not remember what it was in the first place? Like, how did he not, like, he had all these people around him that also saw it. How does no one remember what the anti-life equation was?
And more
importantly, the second main plot hole, though, is that if the mother boxes were left on Earth, how does he not know what planet the mother boxes were left on? Because he knows that Earth is the only planet, presumably, that has mother boxes on it. So he would then know, oh, my mother box is on Earth. The anti-life equation's there too.
So let's say that he was in like psychological denial and he forgot his one defeat. And let's say that he didn't know that that was the equation. Here, he might remember that he cut that in there and it made a pretty design, but he didn't know it was the equation. So riddle me this. With those excuses in tow, how in God's green earth, how in the French toast crunch fuck does Steppenwolf recognize it as the equation? If Darkseid doesn't know what it is, how did this crony who's basically banished know what it was? Or couldn't they be explaining to him, go, when I was on Rigel 6, I learned what the equation looked like, and there it was before me. There drew it for me, and I spared one, and he was with me. And there, something, nothing. It makes no sense. If Darkseid didn't know what it was, there's no way Steppenwolf should have recognized it. If Darkseid knew what it was, he should have remembered the one time he got an axe cleaved through his clavicle. That's just like, oh yeah, that day. That was a bad day, but hey, the equation was there.
That shouldn't even matter, though. The first time that they sensed the mother box as being awoken on Earth, they should have immediately known that the anti-life equation was there as well. How else would the mother boxes have been there? That's the one thing I don't understand. Did he just forget that he had another loss on another primitive planet? Like were there 50,000 primitive planets that he lost on?
No, this was his one loss. This was the one.
So how do you not know that the one loss is the one place where you put the anti-life equation? Since considering that everywhere else you've been, you've conquered.
Exactly.
That means the one place you went to that you did not conquer. Okay, let's say you forget that it was Earth. As soon as the mother boxes awaken and you go and you send Steppenwolf there in the first place, you should immediately know, oh, my anti-life equation is there.
Mm-hmm.
Literally, all you have to do is just not act surprised by the anti-life equation being there. Just say, oh, I found the anti-life equation on Earth. I know where it's at now.
Right. Boom. And if he knew that, they could have, warped over there or wormholed over there when everything was working, instead of waiting for Steppenwolf to fail, which, by the way, he was warned that Steppenwolf would fail by Desaad. Even in space, the French are evil. So the evil Count Desaad warned him. So now they have to do it by the old ways, which I presume means they're just going to, Battlestar Galactica over the Earth. But from the writ large to the writ very small, let's talk about Aquaman for a couple minutes. So he's also about 5,000 years old, though he only makes mention of Diana being 5,000 years old, but he's still, half god as well, and was born a long, long time ago.
I don't think he was. I think he was born, I think he's only 30 because he's half-blood.
Oh, right. Well, his father's still. That's true. The Atlanteans descend into the sea was later. Okay, so forget about that. I was going to pick on his hipster use of language, which is still weird because the only place he hangs out are Norwegian and Icelandic fishing villages. So I don't know where we'd get all the surfer talk. But let's point out that he travels the deep waters. Obviously, he's in the cold waters. He can fly, apparently, up in the atmosphere. So he is not temperature sensitive, is my point. When he goes on land, he puts on a jacket and wraps it tightly around himself. And when he can fly and do anything, he hitches a ride in some dilapidated pickup truck. That is just ridiculous. But aside from that, he's the protector of the oceans. I never saw him protect the oceans once. He protects men. Who's the biggest enemy of the oceans? Men. Not only that, he litters. He took a bottle of whiskey, he drank some of it, and he smashes it on the ground in this pristine Icelandic fishing village or wherever they are, Greenland, whatever. And he takes off his sweater. He just tosses it away. Yes, a woman picks it up because they're all in love with him. Get it. Another time he's wearing a tank top. Why? Don't know why he's wearing a tank top. But he takes that off and he tosses it away. So he's a litter bug too. He's protecting the ocean, but he doesn't care about the land. That's like being a vegetarian who only eats pork. I mean, it's like pick a cause, dude. So, there's my little Aquaman rant. Yeah, minutia stuff, but it's dumb. If you're going to spend time showing us about Barry trying to get jobs and falling in love through this encounter, and you're going to tell us about Aquaman's backstory about his half brother, and he didn't know that his mother sacrificed. He thought she just gave him up. Blah 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 blah. I mean, at least make him a consistent character. You're sure he's an ass about that. He doesn't love the Atlanteans, but he's a litter bug too. I mean, and he's it's ridiculous.
Yes. So let's see let's think about what part we're gonna go into next in the movie. Okay. I got some stuff towards the beginning. The Lois stuff I thought was also a little pointless. There was some good Lois scenes with Superman that actually made sense. But Lois's daily routine, while I really liked seeing that development in her character, not necessary. There was realistically, there was a slow motion scene of her putting a coffee cup down. We're going to get into the slow motion in a minute or two. I want to kind of dissect the scenes and we'll talk about how bad the slow motion was. But why do you need a slow motion scene of a coffee cup being put down? I liked seeing a lot of what happened with Lois, and that's my thing here. I liked most of the scenes in the movie I actually enjoyed, but you can probably cut out 15, 20% of some of the scenes. They were just so many pointless parts of these scenes that made no sense. This was one of them. You do not need Lois character development in this movie. It has no relevance to the film.
Yeah, that's true. But, I'll give a little bit of a pass on this one. It's nice that clearly she hasn't moved on. She's still very much in love, and she visits every single day. It turns out she hasn't gone back to work. Only place in the world that keeps jobs open for people. Terrific. Get it. Listen, she's Superman's widow. That's a rare asset. You cut a little latitude there. But I agree with you that the scenes were way too long. They were way too stylized. We get it. She goes in the rain, she brings coffee to the policeman every day. She knows what he likes to drink. It's lovely. It just didn't need to be so long. It was like agonizingly long. And if that was the point to make us feel her pain, we don't need to. She's a good enough actress. She shows it on her face. We can tell.
That first scene that they did with her, cut out the slow motion, make it a little less stylized like he did with all those cuts from above. And that's a really good scene. That's what I would say. Just take that scene, edit it a little bit, and that's all we need to see of Lois. The Lois, fake Martha, Martian Manhunter scene, no relevance.
I agree with you to the extent. I mean, what was a little bit weird with Martha being the choice, because it sort of made some of the Martha stuff not exactly make sense either. Mm-hmm. But I'll give some, like I said, I'll give some of the Lois stuff a pass, because her deep love is part of what awakened the Clark from Rage-roid Superman, and so that's fine. But the length of it was too much. And a movie that this is that long, you look for places to cut. And it almost seems like at some point they said to him, this is going to be on HBO Max, maybe some theaters. They probably gave him money to do it, but didn't give him a big.
I think they ended up paying. It was supposed to be $70 million. I think he ended up going to about $100. I know it was at least $70 million though to finish the movie.
Okay. I mean, that's more I thought. I figured that maybe they didn't give him a staff so that he didn't have any editors, but maybe he just doesn't know how to edit. Maybe he wanted to show everything. That I'll just call that an overarching criticism. A lot of, like you said, a lot of unnecessary scenes, a lot of scenes that went on too long that didn't need to be as long as they were. And I would say every 30 to 90 seconds that we cut out in this movie counts. A 4-hour movie is too long.
See, I don't agree with Andrew saying that you can't replace Christopher Reeve, and that's why you can't figure it out.
No.
I think Henry Cavill is a solid Superman. The issue with the movies is that they're not good.
No.
That's the main issue with these DC movies, not the
Henry
actors.
Cavill is perfect as Superman. Christopher Reeve was great at the time, but let's face it was cheesy and campy. If Christopher Reeve was Superman now, it would be laughed at theaters. It would be treated like the Adam West comedy series. Yes. Henry Cavill looks the part, acts the part. I don't have any issue with Henry Cavill and his casting or his performance. Any issues I have is with the directions and the way the editing is cut. He's fine. He is not the problem. In fact, I think this role it was so good for him that it guaranteed that he's a superstar no matter what happens going forward.
If there's one thing that I don't think I have a single criticism about, it was everything that they did with Superman. I cannot think of a specific criticism with him. Nothing really felt overly too long. Nothing felt pointless. Nothing like this. I don't think there was much slow motion there. And when it was, it actually fit the character. Unlike some other people that had really unnecessary slow motion. I thought Superman was actually really good in this. I did not like him in Justice League 1 or the original. Loved him in this one.
Yep. I mean, listen, I even liked him in Man of Steel. And Man of Steel, I liked most of the Superman on Earth stuff. The Krypton stuff was awful. It was terrible. And I noticed that they sort of had the same sort of bug bad guys there as the Parademons, which was lazy. I wasn't crazy about the Zod Corps and the final battle, but that was more that the sounds and the special effects were just like Transformers and the first Avengers movie. So it was like annoying to follow that same CGI. Anyway, we're going astray because we agree Henry Cavill, not a problem. I have a problem with Batman. And it's not about Ben Affleck or his performance or anything like that. He was fine. In some places, he was really good. I mean, his cheeks are a little bit puffy for the cowl, but my cheeks are a little bit puffy for anything. My problem with Batman is that most of the time he's not doing anything. It's like he sort of embraced my superpower is I'm rich. Last movie, you built a suit to go toe-to-toe with Superman. You didn't think to do that again when this Armada was coming? You don't have Superman. Maybe you could bring up that super bat suit again and, all your weapons. It's fine to be funny and humble with the Flash. That's cool. But he seemed to be completely unprepared. And in most of the battle scenes, he didn't do a whole lot of battling. If anything, he was like sort of watching the rear and using, an M16 instead of Batman stuff. I mean, Batman does Batman stuff. Batman does cool stuff. Batman's like Bruce Lee, James Bond, Rambo, on Captain America, like, strength serum. He's that guy.
I thought the Batman stuff was fine. I think the reason we didn't see as much of Batman in this film is they wanted to develop Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman a little bit more and show a lot more of what they can do since we hadn't seen them yet. I didn't love and I didn't hate Batman. I thought it was about what it needed to be. He probably could have done a little bit more in the fights, but considering that he's the only one without a power on the team, it made sense what he was actually doing, especially in that final battle. It felt very much like what they do in the comics with Batman, where he funds a lot of the team, he does a lot of the tech with it, and he does kind of what he needs to do. Where the final battle scene, he just takes out the gunners. That's all he really needs to do.
Well, except for the one gunner he needed to take out, who apparently could shoot Flash at light speed, which makes zero sense. And the other thing that made zero sense is at Chernobyl. I mean, I get Superman is impervious to radiation. Let's say Wonder Woman is too. Let's just give her that's part of her.
I know where you're going with this. They did explain that there's no more radiation on that site, that they sucked up all the radiation.
oh, well, then if they sucked up all the radiation, why is it still the hottest place on Earth? Which was the Da Vinci Code-like message. We're going to get that. That doesn't make sense in and of itself. I understood that they said, oh, it's toxic that good. And it could have been that their devices sucked up all the radiation. Well, if it sucked up all the radiation, it would no longer be the hottest place on Earth, which, by the way, Chernobyl is pretty damn hot, but I don't know that it is or isn't the hottest place on Earth. There are, active core, fusion places. It's Fujinama. There's volcanoes. There's magma underground. I mean, the hottest place on Earth includes all of Earth, including the core. Well, maybe they meant on Earth literally, but if your explanation is correct, that the mother boxes sucked up all of the energy and the toxicity to build the device and whatever they were doing there, then it should no longer have been the hottest place on Earth, which defeats the purpose of how they knew where to look for dark side. Now, if it was still the hottest place on Earth, Batman, Cyborg, The Flash, and who was the other guy? Who was the other one with him? Aquaman. Yeah. Aquaman, I think, is susceptible to radiation. They had no protective gear on to protect them from toxic radiation, or they somehow knew that it was no longer toxic. I don't know.
It was them when they were searching the map. They said, because I feel like someone said, "What about all the radiation?" And they said, "Oh, there's no more radiation. He sucked it all up."
Okay, fine.
That was one of the last. Like, I only know that because I just watched that scene about an hour ago.
Okay, it still doesn't explain how this was the hottest place on Earth. I mean, pick one or the other. If that's the case, it should no longer have been hot. There's plenty of other technologies and techniques you could use to find an alien horde on Earth.
So we got Andrew saying that Batman's been recasted too many times. I mean, yeah, he's been recasted a lot. Kurt Russell would be great as Batman. He's great as a gentleman and is a tough guy. Kurt Russell should not be Batman. He's too old.
I'm not even going to talk about the casting. I don't even care about the casting. I mean, that's irrelevant. They're all fine. The movie has enough problems without saying who would have been a better Batman. I think that they were all. I mean, do I like Ezra, whatever his name is, as the Flash? No, he drives me absolutely crazy. But am I talking about that? No. I mean, I don't care. Did I like the Cyborg actor? I didn't think he was particularly sympathetic, but his character is pretty one-dimensional. Don't care. I don't care about the casting. I don't care about all. The movie has enough objective flaws without getting into this kind of silliness.
So let's get into. Okay, so I did this a little earlier.
Can I talk about that, since we just talked about Chernobyl and that whole thing? So the heating the boxes was a message from Cyborg's father, from his professor father, that he's been estranged from most of his life. Basically, the man's a stranger to him. He was basically a bad father. We understand for all of the reasons. Pursuit of science. He was entrusted with unique alien technology by the Pentagon, unknown things. He was married to his work. His wife was a doctor, and he knew that Victor was in good hands, honors student, certified genius, captain of the football team, so, he had some excuses built in. We know he loved his son in his own way. That said, they were basically estranged. He knows that by heating the boxes, somehow that Victor or someone is going to get that message, that by overheating the boxes and doing it purposely because he knew he'd incinerate himself, not on the off chance that it might have incinerated Steppenwolf also, that is somehow a message to him. That's like the Da Vinci Code, where the guy paints, call Robert Langdon and then an arrow to the Mona Lisa, and from there you start following a codex to get you to the Sangreal, which turns out to be the Sangreal, or vice versa, whatever it was. That was a pretty flimsy form of messaging for two people who were basically strangers to one another. And I understand that someone else figured it out, but the father was giving a message to Victor, the only one of them that he knew beyond passing in a hall once.
Yeah.
Dumb.
I mean, there's another thing that happened with his father was when we hear in the tape recorder as Cyborg is learning all of his powers, his dad tells him what he can and can't do, or what he can do. He doesn't really say what he can't. How does he know? How he's confirmed that he had no knowledge of the mother box, and they knew basically nothing. So how does he know what Cyborg's powers are? That's one thing I didn't really understand, was how he would be able to be the one to explain what he could do with his powers. And
right. He built Frankenstein, but as far as I know, he wasn't testing Frankenstein. He sort of went on a limb to harness the energy of the mother boxes, which seemed like a pretty spurious thing to do. An enormous leap of faith there, but I guess that was his Hail Mary. But still, you're right. How did he know what to do? And, and by the way, whatever Cyborg was made out of, even though it was powered by the mother box, it was still human metal. And he took some pretty solid blows from both Superman and Steppenwolf and all sorts of things. And, basically he would like limp for 30 seconds and then he was, ratcheted back into place like Inspector Gadget fixing himself. I mean, Superman can destroy a planet. These guys are titans, the new gods. And Cyborg's human-based aluminum compound or whatever, not adamantium, not vibranium, just some sort of metal, no problem.
Yeah. So I think we talked about this a little bit. This movie had so much slow motion. And slow motion can be good. I mean, we talked about the Flash scene. The Flash scene needed slow motion. I think some scenes, if you're going to show Superman moving very fast, it's good to have some slow motion there. You don't need slow motion for hamburger seeds, for coffee cups, for people playing football. A football scene was all slow motion, and it made for one of the most boring football scenes I've ever seen in a movie.
Right. I watched it. Good. Why were they down?
Yeah.
Earlier.
I watched the animated version of what this story is a little bit based off of, which is the New 52 comics, and the animated movie is called Justice League War. And they did this almost exact same scene in that 50,000 times better in animation and corny, cheap animation because it was actually in full speed. I get what he was going for with the snow and have it being a little stylized. Where was snow the rest of the movie? That was the only part of the movie that we actually saw any snow. It was in that
it
one
could have been
game.
Snow in Chernobyl with nuclear particles falling down. Could have been snow there. No,
we see Gotham and Metropolis multiple other times in this film, and we see no snow.
Yeah, I will say that Cyborg, for a guy who was basically brooding most of the movie and presumably most of his life since the accident, he had the quickest familial psychological breakthrough of all time. And I understand desperate times call for desperate measures, but usually complete psychological healing and forgiving your father of everything immediately isn't usually triggered by intense stress and the world being over. But that breakthrough was ridiculous. So I was like, my father did love me. I'm not broken. And I'm not alone. Okay, dude, Jesus, just like you're saying, no, if I'm going to be part of this world, I'm going to be part of this world. But, I mean, this was just ridiculous. Okay, I agree with you on the Flash and the slow motion. Like, for instance, one place it was very effective is when the Flash thought he was going to get the jump on Superman, and you see Superman just his eye move, and the Flash is like, oh, shit. Very effective. That was a good use of slow motion. What you said and what we talked about earlier, not a good use. And a sesame seed, even in a 3D movie, not necessary. And this was not a 3D movie. So I agree with that. But on the Flash, so he needed to get a running start to run faster than he ever ran before to jumpstart the mother box to basically jumpstart Superman. Okay? So he had to run faster than he's ever run before. So where does he run? To the end of the ship, the entranceway of the ship that was stored in a hangar of a building. So presumably not even the length of a football field. Like they couldn't even open up the hatchway and he goes back, to California or something and runs 2,000 miles to get a head start. He just needed to do a 100-yard dash, apparently, to get to the fastest he's ever run before. That seemed very dumb to me. Maybe I'm nitpicking, but hey. I don't know who this guy is. No more comments from the Ham and Eggers. This is important. Okay, so we already talked about this, but the dude who couldn't hit nothing earlier hits when he's running in circles at light speed because he timed it perfectly. And if you're running at light speed, wouldn't the particle go through you anyway? I mean, that was ridiculous.
Why did he even need to run like that? He should have waited until the absolute moment he was needed, especially since we know what happens immediately next is that once they unify, he has to run backwards in time, which has to be the fastest you can ever go, faster than the speed of light. So if he doesn't even need to be that fast in the first place to stop the unification, why does he need the running? Like, why does he need to run for 5 minutes in a circle?
No idea. I mean, why couldn't he be? If he was too valuable to be risked being hurt by the parademons and other bad guys, shouldn't he have gone like outside of the combat zone? He's the Flash. He could have gotten there in a split second. Yes, I agree with you. All dumb. Speaking of dumb, Martha Kent going through foreclosure. Batman feels very guilty about the death of Superman. His whole mission is about trying to build a team to pick up the slack where Superman left off and to protect the world from others and to embrace Superman's vision, blah, 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 blah. Never in any of this time did he think to check on his mother. I mean, no one. Alfred didn't, who cares about the T-Mash and all sorts of other picayune stuff. The British butler, who's also a solderer and a physicist and an engineer and, basically Department M from James Bond. But Batman couldn't be troubled to check on Martha, maybe pay the mortgage, maybe buy the bank earlier. I mean, it was a good line. How do you manage? How do you stop the bank? I mean, first of all, do you really need to ask Bruce Wayne how he stopped the bank? I'm Bruce Wayne. I will pay off the loan. Or I'm Bruce Wayne. We're going to sue you forever. Or we're Bruce Wayne. But the line was good. I bought the bank. Good line. Great line. But I'm just saying that, yes, Batman was sort of singularly focused, but Alfred wasn't. Alfred was the one who was supposed to humanize him. I'm just saying somebody could have checked on the widow.
I agree.
And since he's a computer guy, he wouldn't have asked Lois, who clearly didn't know anything either. He would go through computer records, and the computer records would find the legal case for foreclosure. Credit score 312.
That's something I noticed too. One of those, there was a lot of again, it goes back to unnecessary scenes, a little bit of not fantastic storytelling, some plot holes that they created here.
Like the dream sequence?
Oh God, let's get in the dream sequence. The dream sequence had no point being in this. I love this scene. I gotta be clear. I actually really like this scene a lot. No point. It meant nothing.
I'd like to see that movie, though. I must ask, if everyone's dead and they're wandering through the wasteland and they're going towards the city, a couple things. Why is Batman wearing his cowl? What's the purpose? And B, why are they surprised that Superman finds them when they're 6 or 7 superpowered beings, not keeping it down, not in disguise, walking on the only road to the main city in their costumes? I mean, why wouldn't Superman find them? I mean, the Flash and Cyborg by themselves emit electric or power signals that you think that they hear, or a super smell could smell Aquagirl or whatever the case may be. I mean, listen, it was interesting. It turned out to be a dream, which made it dopey. I honestly think the only point of it was to show the world that Jared Leto could play the Joker in a way that wasn't going to offend the world, because his portrayal of the Joker there was good. I mean, that Joker worked. The Joker in Suicide Squad, awful.
I believe that the second movie, it was supposed to be a trilogy of films. The second movie was going to be Darkseid. The third one was going to be Injustice, kind of. If you've read the Injustice comics or if you've played the Injustice games, the story is that Lois dies and then Superman kind of loses it and goes crazy. And I think that was the point, was Darkseid was going to kill Lois, Superman would kill Darkseid, and then you have Injustice in the third movie and end it with that. I think that's what they were building towards, because we also saw the nightmare sequence in Batman v Superman. I don't know if Darkseid would have been dead because we saw parademons in Batman v Superman, but it was definitely going to be some sort of Superman they've been planning for, I think he was planning for Injustice the whole time to end the series with that. It's never going to happen. So why even have it in there?
Right. And again, like you said, well, maybe if this movie did really well, maybe that was his way to get leverage to say, hey, WB, Warner Brothers, maybe you should bankroll this because everyone wants to see it. Or maybe it was just mine. He wanted to have Jared Leto get some cred.
Because he had been saying the whole time he was never doing another DC movie. The studio came out and said they did this interview 2 days ago, right after it released, saying that we're not going to move forward with the Snyderverse. He knew his movie, no matter what, was never going to get made. And I think it was because he wanted to. People are going to defend it, saying he wanted to see out his whole vision. That does not make it an excuse.
No, that's indulgent.
Saying that a director's vision is the reason why you're okay with something happening is terrible. It's terrible critiquing of anything. Saying that, oh, that was their vision, so it's okay. No, it's not. It's a bad vision. It's a crappy vision.
Well, some directors earn the right to have their vision on full display through consistent deliverance. Others don't. Zack Snyder has been very hit or miss. So he didn't merit that full vision. And that's the reason why there's editors, and that's the reason why there's a studio and stuff like that. But in any event, I mean, it just felt like it was a very different movie of Mad Max, Fury Road, the Book of Eli. I mean, it felt like a whole lot of things, except it didn't feel like a superhero movie. So, I mean, that would be a movie I'd be interested to see if it wasn't superheroes or if they lost their powers or something. Anyway, it was a dream, so it's dumb. And yes, I know that there were, the dreams and movies, but, if there's not going to be a sequel, and our presumption is they defeated the bad guy, and dark side's coming, but they don't know the dark side's coming, and Lord knows how long it's going to take Darkseid to get there, because apparently they're going the long way. So it could be centuries for all we know. It could be millennia again. Mm-hmm. But I have to say something about the very end after the dream, because this guy flies down and Batman's just like, can I help you? I mean, you think after all of this, the lesson he might have learned was to be a bit more vigilant and not, come out in his coffee and his pajamas, maybe get into his Batman suit or bring a weapon or something. I mean, he's older Batman. That was sort of the point of why he was stepping back and building his team. He no longer could be he knew that he was outgunned and he was getting older. So that seemed like a very laissez-faire attitude. He's not an empath to know that this guy was friendly. But more importantly than that, apparently the Martian Manhunter has been on Earth for a long time, decades. And all of this time, he's just been sitting the shit out?
He was the general in Man of Steel. So we know that he was at least there for that.
Right. But he was sitting it out. He knew that Steppenwolf was there and that the Earth was in peril. He just sat it out. And then he goes, one day you're going to need me. One day you're going to we needed you a week ago. Where were you then, douchebag? And what can you do? I mean, how dumb is that he was basically taking a knee the whole time. And now he's like, hey guys, I'm here to help. You're going to need me. No. Why? Remind me why? Why are we going to need you? Didn't you notice Superman's back? I mean, it was just dumb. And it's like, I guess I'll keep in touch. And by the way, the special effects after that were terrible. I couldn't tell what direction the guy was flying. And it looked to me like he was diving into the water. Then he was going. It was like 1979 flight special effects. But Martian Manhunter, I would have been like, you dick. And Ben Affleck as Batfleck, that was his act. He should have been like, you dick. Where the fuck were you? We needed you. We could have used you. Whatever you do, I'm sure you could have been helpful.
Exactly. Yeah.
You could have at least told us what was going on. We wasted a lot of time trying to piece this together.
I agree. That was definitely an issue I had. The last scene of the movie is him saying, or the last line of the movie is him saying, they call me the Martian Manhunter. That's a horrible last line for a movie. Yeah, terrible.
I mean, at least give him your name. Give him your real name. I mean, among friends. I mean, if you want him to trust you. I I see we're approaching an hour, and I want to do my closing arguments because we've done a lot of nitpicky stuff. And if you want to circle back to other things, I'm more than happy to continue to gripe because everyone knows Evil Dose isn't happy unless he's complaining. But a lot of people have been comparing this to the Godfather of superhero movies. Top 10 movie of all time. No, this is not the Godfather of superhero movies. As we pointed out, it wasn't even really that good. But even if you don't agree with me that it wasn't below okay, and you still think that it was good, don't tell me it was great. The parallel for this is not the Godfather. The parallel for this is another gangster movie which copies off other movies and uses tropes in a blatant manner, ripping off The Godfather, Casino, Goodfellas, and a host of other mob movies and mafia movies. And I'm talking about the recent movie, The Irishman. So you had very unconvincing, sort of stale performances, not very good character development. You had a movie that was way too long, way overrated. People talking about how it was a great gangster movie. It was not. It was long, boring, and hard to get through. Now, if you took an editor to The Irishman and took it from 3 hours and 45 minutes to 2 hours and 20 minutes, maybe it could have been an okay movie if you could have gone around Robert De Niro at 50, you know, when they make him look 50 playing a 21-year-old, and he looks 80 when he's playing a 50-year-old. If you could get around that, which I couldn't, but if you were forgiving that, still not a great movie. So the people complaining about the casting, hey, embrace my Irishman metaphor, but wrong gangster movie, long, overrated, boring, not very well done, not a very good story, and copied parts of other stories and tried to mash them together like Cyborg, like a Frankenstein. The end.
Yeah. So I think we touched on basically everything I needed to. I enjoyed this movie. I'm taking it for what it is. It's not the greatest superhero movie of all time, not the greatest comic book movie of all time, not the best DC movie of all time, or DCEU for that matter. But it is a much better improvement on the original. There are numerous plot holes, numerous things that could have been easily cut out of this film that had no business being in there. They did not advance the story. It was basically just to add time. They should have said, you got to get this done to 3 hours, but it's on streaming, which is why he got that time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we dissected everything.
Yeah. If people said the same thing as you said, this was better than 2017, it's not perfect, but geez, I've been in quarantine for a year. It's on HBO Max. I can hit pause. I can watch it at my own pace. Mm-hmm. You know what? It was better than that. I enjoyed it because I've had basically very few new movies for the last year. Here's a new movie. It came out. It made 3 of my days better where I watched something for an hour and 15 minutes, hour and 20 minutes. I enjoyed it. I could talk about it with my friends. So I thought it was pretty cool. That's okay. It's the hyperbole saying this is like the greatest superhero movie of all time. Yeah. I'm not even sure it's going to be the greatest superhero movie of the year. Anyway.
Yeah. I don't think it will.
Yeah. Enough about that. I mean, I feel a little bit bad taking, basically saying that an okay movie and picking on it this much, but you all made us do this. You all made us do this by talking about this like it's the Citizen Kane of superhero movies. It's not. And I only watched it once. If I watched it twice or 3 or 4 times, if I was in prison, then imagine all the other things I could have, holes I could have found, other things I could have picked on. Come on, people.
And that's why we did this review. I knew that the review last night was going to be a love fest of that film. And there's issues. There are issues there. I see too many people loving up on this film because it's an artist getting his vision, which is cool that he got it. But you can't just say that it's great because you like the story of Snyder getting his vision for finally getting to tell his vision. It's not a fantastic movie.
And entertainment team, let me tell you something. The most entertaining part of your review was your Android versus iPhone comparison. That was the best part. The second best part were the other cast members laughing and trying to hide they were laughing when the one guy, I think his name is James, was doing a speech for about 45 minutes, doing a filibuster. His name should be Phil E. Buster. My goodness. That guy went on forever about the Universe 52 and the reboot, and nobody fucking cares. It's a movie. The movie has to be better than the old movie. It's a movie. We don't need the whole backstory. And Phil E. Buster himself said a lot of people make the mistake of thinking this is based on comics. It's not. That's their mistake. Then proceeded to explain everything to us in the context of the old comics, the reboot comics, the new 52, the old 52. Either it's based on the comics or it's not based on the comics. Pick a lane, Philly Buster. You didn't even make sense with yourself within your own 45-minute soliloquy. My God, you were like Lindsey Graham out there. I don't think that Trump did anything wrong. Trump encouraged the riots. It's a disgrace. No, don't vote for impeachment. Come on, man. I'm done. This time I'm really done. I got scotch behind me. I'll be okay.
Let's be clear about one more thing. That I said this in the chat, and they kept telling me I was wrong. This was not his original vision. He has confirmed that there were things that he changed that he was not originally going to have in the movie. They did reshoot scenes. It was a nightmare scene. It was supposed to be in the movie, but in a much different sense. Joker was never going to be in it. I believe he might have. I know he changed up a lot of the CGI because of complaints about the original CGI. The fact of the matter is that this was not going to be his original movie. It was going to be a 2-hour and 40-minute cut of what this was.
You know what the vision was?
You cannot call this his original vision.
The vision was blurred vision.
I mean, you cannot call this movie his original vision. It's not. It's a version of his original vision, but it is not the vision that he had in 2016 that was going to end up in theaters in 2017. So, I mean,
and folks, don't think Evil Dose only drinks the black label. It's got the good stuff here too.
I think we went through everything. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the Kaden Kut. Before we go, I'm just going to run through a few things. Tonight at 9:15, we have the X-Men Dark Phoenix movie review. Again, Chris, the executive consultant last night, said that he actually enjoyed this movie, so he loses all credibility because this is one of the worst movies I've ever seen.
Whew.
Thursday night, Tales from the Crypt, Demon Knight, another movie review. Of course, you just watched, or this was last night. I thought I had the Kaden Kut graphic. There it is. You were watching the Zack Snyder's Justice League, the Kaden Kut. And then if you want to see my reaction to the technician being a little rat last night and trying to change my boxing match challenge into a wrestling match, you can catch that. Will I agree to the technician stipulation? Catch that tomorrow night on the AEW and NXT Results show on March 24th.
Let me tell you something, brother. David changing the terms of the challenge is not accepting a challenge. That's still not accepting it. That's a forfeit. That's an L. You get the win either way. That's okay. And I will say, if you accept his challenge, you're already more of a man than he is. Win, lose, or draw. That is not you laid a challenge. He changed the terms. That is not accepting a challenge. That's backing away. I'm sure you're still going to beat his ass, though.
Yeah, I will make my official statement tomorrow about that. Make sure you guys tune in to the NXT AEW Results show and see what I have to say. So, I've been That's So Kaden. He's been Evil Dose the Malachi. Catch us tomorrow night in the AEW NXT Results show. See you guys later.
Later.